What happens when you need to have a difficult conversation with someone? There's times when there are things you need to talk about that might be perceived as being difficult or challenging, or you don't have a clue how someone is going to respond, and you just need to have a conversation with someone. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's a boss, a spouse, an employee, you name it. Having a difficult conversation can be, well, just that, difficult and hard. Today, I'm going to tell you a story about a difficult conversation I recently had and why it takes courage and how you can connect with this person despite it being difficult, and the best way to reframe and use what I call the 3R method to be able to resolve the conversation. Stay tuned. Hi there. My name is Heather J. Crider, and I welcome you to the Go Reflect Yourself podcast. I'm here to bring you real, practical, brain-based strategies helping you transform your life one thought at a time. Working hard and staying busy will only get you so far. To truly become happy, content, and who you're meant to be, you have to move beyond physical capacities and look from within, allowing you to overcome those obstacles and barriers. My mission is to help inspire you to take massive action to transform your life, all starting from the inside out. I invite you to watch or listen to this podcast and share it with others who you feel can also benefit from it. I invite you to join my free Facebook group, Beat Burnout. That's where we provide more practical neuroscience and mindset strategies, helping you reduce stress, anxiety, and overcome overwhelm. Thank you so much for being here. I'm honored and grateful for you.
You are stronger than you believe. You have greater powers than you know.
Okay, so as I mentioned, I recently had to what I call have a difficult conversation. And let me first start by saying conversations that look like they might potentially have a little bit of a conflict, or that you don't know how someone else is going to respond, or you need to tell someone something that maybe they don't want to hear. It takes a lot of courage. And if you're like me, I'm just going to throw myself under the bus. I'm a Sagittarius, and I tend to be a little bit of a quick reactor and a little bit of hot-headed and hot-tempered, which means sometimes I come across a little harsh and a little blunt. Sometimes that's okay. And to be very honest, when I'm dealing with my clients, sometimes they really appreciate the blunt candor. My children, on the other hand, typically don't like my blunt candor. But my point in saying this to you is blunt, hot-headed, hot-temperedness is not always effective, and it can come across really mean and harsh and unkind and uncompassionate. That's not even a word. You know what I mean. When you approach someone with kindness, curiosity, and compassion, it feels much more connected. And so I've really, over the years, tried to develop skills. And when I go reflect myself, these are the things that I've uncovered about myself. And I know my reactors. I know the things that really trigger me, activate me, and sometimes they're just not pretty. And that's really the whole point of self-reflection. So we can start looking and analyzing, when can I be a better version of myself? When can I present a better version of myself for someone, not only to make myself feel better, but to have a better connected and a much more compassionate relationship with someone else? Because the truth is if we're able to compassionately connect with someone, and we have the courage of being able to stand up even when things are hard, then everybody benefits from that. And part of compassion, this is where a lot of our world of emotional intelligence and compassion and kindness and even self-compassion is looked at as being extremely passive, or just like you're throwing stuff under the rug, or that you're just sweeping over it in a very passive way. I'm sorry, my brain's not being very logical right now. Passive is the only word I keep coming up with, but I think you get my point. Emotional intelligence is viewed as soft, these soft skills. I don't believe in that because soft skills has this association with being walked over or letting things go or letting people off the hook. And part of compassion, part of courage is being bold enough and courageous enough to tell people how you feel without a obligation or even a clue of how they're going to respond. The outcome you can't control. And having the courage and the compassion to being able to highlight, or what I call spotlight, the truth is sometimes difficult. But it's not about putting someone in the spotlight. It's about shining light on different perspectives. And that's really what this whole conversation is about. Having compassionate, collaborative, courageous conversations, even when they might be difficult or perceived as being difficult. So I want to share with you a little story here of something that recently happened with me with a really close friend of mine. And my friend, if you are going to listen to this episode, which you probably will, I first want to start off by saying, I love you. I'm so grateful for our friendship. And that's why I really want to share some of this conversation. And I'm going to protect her and protect the conversation and the integrity of our relationship. But I want to share my perspective because I think this is a great lesson that happens every day. Because if I go back to what I said earlier, difficult conversations, difficult situations happen every day. And a lot of confrontation is looked at in so much negative light. We get stressed. Our bodies get anxious. We lose sleep because of potential confrontation or just because of being upset over a situation that may or may not even be the way you think it is. So let me explain briefly what happened and why I'm even telling you this. Recently, one of my dear friends, again, whom I love and I respect so very, very, very much, we had a brief email exchange with someone else, and she sent me a text message regarding that email exchange. And at the time I received the text message, I was actually, in what she didn't know, she may not still realize, when I received her text message response, I was dealing with something very heavy. And I was not feeling very good about myself, or it was just kind of what I call in a funky moment, in a funky place. So when I received her text message, she had a view of this email exchange, and forgive me, I'm being very vague, so follow along the best you can. But there's a point, and if you just hang on here with my story, that tend to be long anyway. But anyway, just hang on. There's a point. When I received her text message regarding the email that she had read that we exchanged with someone else, she had a different view, and she had some concern over the exchange. We both kind of read into things, and we were both coming from different places and things that neither one of us knew. Unfortunately, this led to a gap in our conversations, in our interactions. And she and I actually went several weeks without having a real conversation. We exchanged some very, very short and sweet text messages. We tried to communicate with one another, but we could never completely connect to just have a conversation. So the more time that went on, I thought the worst. I thought, oh my gosh, either I've done something horribly to offend my dear friend and she hates me, or I don't know, something either is going on in her life where she's just either blowing me off or she just sincerely can't connect. Either way, I'm going to be very honest. I lost some sleep over it because it's really the first time in our relationship since I've been friends with this amazing woman, that we've had really any major challenges and difficulties. And it certainly is the longest period of time that we've gone without speaking. Now, I don't know about you, but I've had many friendships and many relationships where sometimes you just kind of drift. And sometimes the relationship just deteriorates, maybe for a reason, maybe for no particular reason whatsoever. And maybe in the future, you look back and go, I wonder what happened. Or maybe you don't care. I didn't want I care about this person greatly, and our relationship is very close, and we've been through a lot together. And I didn't want our relationship to deteriorate. I wanted to give her space. She wanted to give me space. But enough was enough, and we needed to have a conversation. So we agreed to have a conversation, and I really wanted to meet her in person, and we just couldn't make that happen. So we had a conversation over the phone, which was fine. And let me back up, because this is what part of the courageous, difficult, and compassionate piece to conversations. And there's a lot of strategies here, and I'm just going to show you a few that I actually used on myself in this conversation. Before I had the conversation with her, when I knew we were going to meet, I had really sat down over the weeks prior, and I really started thinking about what might be going on in her life, what might be going on with her family, what might be going on with her business. And I really didn't want to make any assumptions, but I also wanted to say, okay, what might be happening from her perspective? What might she be thinking? Again, not to put any words or any specific ideas, but just to look at a different perspective. Because it's very easy, especially for me, my mind can wander so quickly, and I can think the worst either in someone or in myself if I let my mind just totally spiral. I can be thinking, oh my gosh, the worst of the worst. This person is not only going to hate me, but she's going to tell everybody how horrible of a friend and person I am, or I don't know. I'm not saying that I thought that or she thought that, but I'm just saying your brain, your mind can wander and take you in places that are dark and dirty if you let it. I would like to interrupt this podcast and invite you to a money mastery workshop I have coming up very soon. If you're honest, and we're all honest about money, money affects us every single day. Most of us have a lot of stress because of money. We cannot leave our houses or even be in our houses without doing or thinking something connected to money. However, have you ever thought about your relationship with money? Is your current financial life where you want it to be? Does your financial life affect other areas of your life and causing more stress? Likely the answer is yes, and regardless of your income or your financial situation, you likely might also be shackled by money and even have avoiding the money conversations. The Money Mastery Workshop will teach you how to approach the mindset of money, how to reprogram your thoughts and your feelings and your beliefs around money and where they actually come from, so you can eliminate fear, doubt, and worry once and for all. The idea is to understand that making money is actually very easy once you know a few of these very simple strategies and how to clear these blocks that stand in your way. And having an abundant life is easy also when you know the thinking and the mindset behind money. So head on over to heatherjcrider.com/money workshop. The next workshop is August 30th. Permanently free yourself from financial insecurity and start attracting the money, abundance, freedom, and lifestyle you desire and deserve. Sign up now for the August 30th workshop. Head on over to heatherjcrider.com/money workshop. heatherjcrider.com/money workshop. Okay, let's get back to this amazing episode. And so that's when I really started reflecting. And over the prior few weeks, when my mind started to wander, one of the techniques I kicked in for myself is what I call, and I'll share this with you, it's a strategy I use with all my clients. It's called WIN. Win the moment. WIN, meaning what's important now. And so every time I would catch myself drifting or thinking about my friend or thinking about we've ruined our relationship or I've done something that could potentially ruin our relationship, or she hates me, or I've offended her, or whatever my brain might have drifted to, I stop myself. I may have meditated, or I may have taken a break, physically taken a break, but I always went back to the WIN strategy, what's important now, and reframe myself into either where I was at the moment, who I was interacting with, if it was a interaction with someone else, to make sure that I was fully present, or if I was working on a task that I needed to start focusing on, what's important now? What do I need to be concentrating on right now, instead of letting my mind really take over and take me in places that just were a waste of time. But when I did want to start reflecting and thinking about my friend and possible observations from different perspectives, that's when I used what I call the 3R method. My 3R method, I'm going to share with you right now, and it can be applied in so many different situations. But the first is that it's to reflect. And in this case, reflecting on myself, my involvement, and what other things might have been going on in her life. Then I sat back to reframe my emotions, reframe knowing that part of my emotions in this scenario when I first was activated was because I was in a pretty funky place. And maybe I read into her message. Maybe I overlooked something. Maybe I forgot something that she had told me that she was working on or that she was busy with. The reframe was also then really looking at what are the possible scenarios or things that might she be thinking, or how can I see it from her perspective? The third part of the 3R method is what I call reward. The reward comes from having the courage to do all the other pieces. The reward comes from not only having the courage to reflect and reframe, but quite frankly, to move forward in the most compassionate way, the self-compassion and compassion for another human without attachment to the outcome. Because the truth is, this is the part that really stresses us out the most. We don't have the ability to control the outcome. 99.9% of the time, we really truly cannot control the outcome. We can control our action and our response. So what does that mean? It means when I'm ready to have this conversation with my friend, I don't know how she's going to respond. And if I give my gut reactions to things from my emotion or a place that doesn't serve me or her, that's going to damage our relationship and damage my integrity and my compassion towards myself and my compassion towards her. So let me fast forward here and kind of get to the meat. She and I did have a conversation, and we both exhibited what I would call a compassionate conversation. We were succinct and we were very honest with how we felt and the approach of this is how I felt and why. And the truth is I had said something quite some time ago that I don't want to use the word offended, but because I'm not going to put words in her mouth, but I said something that hurt her quite some time ago. And I did not know it. The perspective she saw what I said and the perspective of what I saw what I said were very, very different. But the truth is it doesn't matter where I was coming from with what I had said to her. All that mattered to me was that how it landed hurt her. Impact and intention are very different things. And even though my intention of what I actually said was completely what I thought was a joke, it landed for her in a little bit of a hurtful way and a little bit of a disrespectful way. And I never, ever saw it that way. And so she had the courage to tell me how it landed. That was the impact to her. I had the courage to listen and accept that perspective of how it impacted her without being offended. And she had the courage to accept my intention of where I was coming from, despite the impact and how it landed for her, even though it hurt her. And it was a little disrespectful. And now that I see it from her perspective, and now that I know how she was looking at it, now I'm thinking, oh my gosh, Heather, what a bonehead thing to say. Why did you say that? That was my first reaction. What a bonehead thing. But here's where the other part of compassionate communication comes in, and the 3R method comes in, is I have to forgive myself. I hope she forgives me, and I hope she forgives my intention, and despite my intention, how it affected her. And here goes back to the cycle of this. She has the choice now to respond, either to forgive me or not. I think she does, and I think she will continue to. However, I can't control that. And even though I desire the outcome to be obviously a certain way, the truth is we never, ever, ever can control someone else's response. And that's the part about all communication, all conversations involved in those relationships, is they might deteriorate because of certain expectations, and perhaps even certain expectations to the outcome. But again, that's part of the courageous part. And it's also part of the 3R method of integrity to yourself and integrity to respecting the other person enough to be honest and have the courage to be honest despite that. I had another conversation with a colleague actually, and we were talking about what I call radical responsibility. And the radical responsibility is really owning your participation in every conversation. And it's very difficult to look at someone else's viewpoint because we all have our own viewpoints. And regardless, the lens, the frame, the perspective that I filter things through are mine. And we all, I'm going to just use myself here, we all expect other people to think the way we do. And because we forget that everything I process in my brain comes through my lens. My experiences shape how I process everything. Good, bad, right, or wrong, or ugly. So it comes down to really having radical responsibility, because our thoughts and our words have consequences, regardless of how they land, regardless of our intention. Every thought, every word has a consequence. Maybe it's positive, maybe it's negative, maybe it's neither. But there's a consequence to every single thing we think and every single thing we do. So going back to the attachment to the outcome, we can't control how other people are going to react. But this is where most of us get into fear. Most of us, because of fear of what if this person reacts in a negative way. And I'm going to be honest, again, in this situation with my friend over the past month or so, I had certain thoughts of fear. What if our relationship is ruined? What if I no longer have this person in my life? And that's where I had to use some self-reflection tools, like I mentioned earlier, of the WIN strategy to keep me present in the things I was doing. But because of that fear, and because of our own insecurities, and because of our own fears, sometimes we project an outcome that we make up, or because we're trying to control it that much. Remember, our frame of reference, our experiences shape the way we filter every single thing through. Sometimes our own fears, our own insecurities, our own even guilt and shame causes our integrity to ourselves and others to fail us in some ways. And fail is a really strong word, but it makes us scared. It makes us paralyzed to even have the compassionate, difficult conversation. So the takeaway I want to have for you today is, in business and in life, having difficult conversations, they're just that. They can be difficult. But when you apply some of the strategies I've talked about here today with the 3R method, where you reflect on a situation, you look at the perspectives, you feel what you feel, you honor yourself, and there's other layers inside of this, including self-compassion and really looking at your participation and having radical responsibility. But then you reframe in honest, compassionate, constructive ways. You keep your frame of reference about you, but you consider the other person before you actually enter the conversation. And then the reward, this is where we really try to control it, but the reward may not be the outcome that you're looking for. The reward, however, is releasing the emotions, releasing in your brain, releasing the potential fear, doubt, worry, insecurity, and having the integrity. The benefit, the reward comes from the integrity and the courage and the honesty and respect for someone else to have a difficult conversation. Respect is a big word we actually haven't talked about here, but that's another piece and component to, again, what I call the 3R method. So having said all of that, having a difficult conversation is worth it. If you can just take a moment to take a look at your involvement, to take a look at potential other pieces to this conversation, what someone else might be feeling, but really keeping it short and succinct of how you feel, and having that courage to stand up for how you feel is very empowering. And going back to my conversation with my friend, she exhibited great courage in the conversation she and I had by telling me how she felt and being honest with me of how I hurt her. And that took a lot, because she could have just kept that for herself and I never would have known. So I give her a lot of credit, and I'm so appreciative of that. And now I know. And you don't know what you don't know. And you also don't know how someone else is feeling. And for me, some things land differently. There's some days where things land very differently, where I don't pay any attention to it. And some days where it really feels heavy the way things land. And we also have to be honest with our emotions and how other things affect us really day to day. And that's just okay, because guess what? It means you're human. Sometimes simply being human is enough. So that's my takeaway for you today. I hope that this has been beneficial for you. And let me know, connect with me. Let me know how this landed for you, and try it. Try to take a moment in a difficult conversation that you might be experiencing. Just be honest, but be compassionate, and see where it goes. See you soon. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Go Reflect Yourself. Please rate and review this episode, and if something moved you, please feel free to share. For more inspired action or to stay in touch, head on over to goreflectyourself.com or heatherjcrider.com. You can also take the growth mindset quiz and learn where your current growth mindset lies. Stay in touch on all social media at Heather J. Crider. Until next time, this is your host, Heather Crider, and I am challenging you to go reflect yourself so you can discover and become who you are meant to be.